Day 1174 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 967,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,170 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 8 tanks, 27 APVs, 48 artillery, 3 air defense systems, with a Tor-M2 as an example from the south. Then lastly, but never shown on this list before, 1 oil rig. But before getting into all of that, starting out with the latest in Moscow-Kyiv relations, as the diplomatic chessboard is set for a potential breakthrough, or another elaborate diplomatic feint, following Putin's after-midnight call for bilateral talks between the two countries, located in Turkey this Thursday the 15th. Turkish President Erdogan, as mediator, and President Zelensky have accepted Putin's proposal for face-to-face talks this coming week, with Ukraine really eager to engage, despite Russia's cold shoulder to the latest proposed 30-day Western-backed ceasefire. So for this upcoming event, Zelensky threw down the gauntlet and wasted no time responding, essentially saying, "Great, see you Thursday," showing unmistakable eagerness and taking the high road diplomatically. And the geopolitical calculus for this upcoming event is fascinating. Putin, who hasn't visited Turkey in years, is either extending a genuine olive branch or another strategic deflection in his latest iteration of calculated maneuvers. Question is, will Putin personally appear knowing that Zelensky is showing up, or send a delegation? So the stakes are high. If Putin shows up, it could signal a potential diplomatic breakthrough. If he doesn't, the optics are damning, showing one leader ready to talk, the other conspicuously absent. Which all means Zelensky seems to have effectively called Putin's bluff before Putin could fully articulate his intentions. And although Putin stated no preconditions in his nearly 2 a.m. Sunday morning press conference, still, during that event, among the suggestions he made was to model the upcoming event based on the 2022 Istanbul talks that they could build on the foundations of, quote-unquote. But there's a reason why the 2022 Istanbul peace framework was never followed through, being widely regarded as unfavorable for Ukraine due to several critical factors, which in list form includes A. Compromising Ukraine's sovereignty, proposing it be a permanently neutral state and barring it from NATO. Then B, it oddly gave Russia veto power, as the security guarantees in the document outlined had required consensus among guarantor states, including Russia. This provision would have granted Moscow a de facto veto over any international military assistance to Ukraine, undermining the country's defense autonomy. Then C, huge territorial concessions were on the menu. So in summary, the Istanbul framework was perceived as a blueprint for Ukrainian capitulation, compromising its sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. It's not gonna fly. But the biggest question now might be, given Putin's all of a sudden changing heart for coming to the table soon, perhaps with bilateral talks, is what exactly did Chinese President Xi Jinping say to Putin as they sat together during the Russian parade last Friday, where Xi Jinping may have emphasized the incredibly difficult role he is playing as a neutral party in a world where Russia only accounts for 4% of Chinese trade, as opposed to the closer to 40% for the US and the EU. All leading to China not willing to risk decreased stability on their own economic front on the prospect of future potential sanctions against their own country. Well, whatever the two spoke about, it's clearly had some sort of an effect on Putin. Then headed across to the Russian map, an event made known in the past day, for happening nearly a week ago, as a Ukrainian strike had destroyed a Russian component factory at Sheglovsky in Tula. which manufactures Pantsir S-1 air defense systems. Now Russia has to reset Pantsir production operations somewhere else for a system that is one of the biggest wastes of space in the air defense industry to begin with. But they don't seem to know that. Then on the map and heading some 2,000 kilometers east of Moscow, but not precisely war-related. However, a significant fire broke out at an oil and gas field in Russia's Yamalonets region about 24 hours ago. The blaze affected 2 oil and gas wells, burning throughout the night and leading to the collapse of one drilling rig. As of this morning, the fire was still ongoing, with 2 25-meter-high flares continuing to burn, and with BP pulling out of operations some time ago and being specific to this site. Speculation swells that the loss of international expertise may have played a role in this disaster. Then headed across into Ukrainian Donetsk, where there was a bit of to and fro activity to be seen. Starting out, it's been reported that Ukrainian forces defeated a large Russian assault west of Novoalexandrivka in the Pokrovsk sector. Then just south of here, Ukrainian defenders have held the line on the outskirts of Constantinople. But just above it, Russian forces closed a slice gap in some of this unmarked territory. Then on the map bordering the east and the south, activity seen from Ukrainian soldiers of the 30th Mechanized Brigade that struck a shelter where Russians were hiding flammable materials, specifically a tank and a Buhanka van. Then somewhere into the Zaporizhia southern front in proper, combat work of the 77th Separate Airmobile Brigade, seen performing their duties on Russians, their positions and equipment, as well as field ammunition depots. Then on the map, but for a change, somewhere not in the east, or seen anywhere on the map, is the interesting development of Russia's complete abandonment of the use of prefabricated concrete fortifications in most recent times. You won't even see them near Kherson anymore. In fact, it's been at least 12 to 18 months since we've seen these. This seems to be a reaction to the AFU's FPV interdiction zones, meaning to say the active prevention or disruption of enemy movements or operations through frontline drone attacks that blur the lines of what exactly constitutes frontline zones these days, with their FPVs traveling anywhere between 20 to 40 kilometers into the rear, targeting, for example, Russian trucks and engineering equipment, failing to make it to the front. Leading to leaving only Russia's modern-day logistical workhorse, the Scooby-Doo Buhanka van, a platform far from suitable for carrying all types of equipment. We'll see no concrete fortifications strapped to the roof of those things. Although, given what we've seen, I probably shouldn't rule that out. Then headed back to the news, where the clock is ticking, as Germany has issued an ultimatum to Russia, demanding a response to a proposed 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine by midnight tonight, local Russian time. Failure to comply will trigger preparations for a new sanctions package. The warning, delivered by government spokesperson Stefan Cornelius, signals potential political, financial, and military repercussions for Moscow if they decline. But realistically, it's less of a case of if Putin will respond and agree, to more of a case of what will the excuse be this time? Meanwhile, and on the same topic, China has expressed support for the ceasefire, marking what could be its first true entry into the negotiation process. But for now, the deadline looms, with Russia facing significant diplomatic pressure and the prospect of penalties. And then on the Kremlin front, and in a sign of what might be to come in the Thursday bilateral talks in Turkey, well, according to Kremlin spokesperson Peskov, Moscow does not agree with the idea of deploying European peacekeepers in Ukraine, citing Russia's inability to allow NATO infrastructure to be located near its borders. Kind of an off comment for a country using NATO member Turkey for peace negotiations, and of course, hard to forget the existence of NATO members Finland, Estonia, Latvia, already on Russia's border. Not to mention Poland and Lithuania when it comes to the Kaliningrad exclave. Then moving across, with so much Ukrainian hardware news coming to bear, I'll move to a rapid-fire section on this front, with a few instances today. Starting off, then came the Raven, Britain's low-cost, rapidly built air defense system, now officially revealed, which has quietly downed nearly 300 Russian drones in Ukraine. Born from retired Royal Air Force parts and a tight 3-month design sprint, the Raven launches ASRAAM missiles, traditionally the advanced air-to-air missiles, designed for short-range combat. Ukraine's got 8 in the field, the Ravens, not the missiles, with 5 more Ravens incoming. Then in some more hardware updates, Ukraine has successfully tested the B1 repeater for Chimera radios in an Aerobavovna aerostat, extending range to 32 kilometers. It deploys in 10 minutes, offers encrypted comms for 14 days without a recharge, doubles coverage, enhances command, coordination, saves lives, and supports FPV drones and recon. Tactically significant and a low cost. Then in some more Ukrainian hardware news, the GART 5100 remote mine clearance vehicle has received certification for serial production. For the platform, all production stages occur within the country, which always goes a long way to streamline logistics for rapid delivery, maintenance, and repair. This unmanned robust system can clear up to 5 hectares of mined territory daily and withstand anti-tank mines, including the TM62. Nice paint job as well. And so on these update notes, with Ukraine's growing defense industry, European Commissioner Andrius Kubilius has stated that the European Union is ready to double military support to Ukraine by purchasing weapons from Ukrainian manufacturers, thereby significantly increasing its volume, achieving those economies of scale that turns into a net benefit for both Ukraine and European allies. Moments like these rarely make headlines, but they often make frontline history. And then headed across to a quick rapid-fire Russian military mobilization blunder segment. It's really not like it was 12, 18 months ago. It's much worse. There's just too much to comment on. With the theme on these accounts today entirely about how anyone can expect Russia to treat anybody else with respect when they don't even show it to their own. Starting off, latest footage shows Russian commanders, like this one with the call sign Kama, ordering 2 soldiers sitting in a pit to beat each other with their bare hands until one's lights go out, and whoever remains alive will come out of the pit and get a second chance at life in the meat assault ranks. It's a grim reality for Russia's 114th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, formerly the 11th Vostok Regiment of the DPR. Then on a separate account, scene was more of Russian command tying their own soldiers to trees because, as the saying goes, let the beatings continue until the morale improves. And then lastly, an unidentified Russian blogger criticizes the army's lack of coordination, describing it as hopeless and marked by arrogant disregard, where military branches obstruct each other, lacking a larger cohesive unit. Ironically, a popular patch among soldiers labeled Interaction features the cartoon opossums from the animated film franchise Ice Age, symbolizing the absurdity and the situation and how fatal the lack of coordination really is, because without it, as the war blogger said, you're not just alone, you're probably dead. Then headed across to a few quick funnies to round off the video today, this one being Victory Day Parade themed. So quickly, first up, but perhaps unsurprisingly, it's since been confirmed that Vladimir Putin was positioned under the construction of an airstrike shelter during Victory Day Parade in Moscow last Friday. This appears to be the very first time that this has happened, highlighting the Russian government's nervousness about the threat of Ukrainian drone attacks. In previous years, the Russian president and other VIPs have been seated in the open air stand adjacent to the Kremlin's outer wall, overlooking the Red Square. How times are changing for Russia. Then, as for another parade day funny, or at least an oddity, scene was how the annual military event was guarded by special forces on rooftops with SPG-9 anti-tank grenade launchers. The SPG-9 is designed for hitting armored vehicles, so not exactly standard gear for parade security. It's overkill and wildly impractical for urban rooftop defense. Then lastly, in the city of Shita of central Russia, as part of their own Victory Day celebrations, they decided the air show must go on, with or without the planes, and in this case, combining a crane with a small manned military jet mock-up painted on wooden frame, going above and beyond as a means to project their country as a military aviation power. I thought it was a piñata until I saw the guy inside. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!